Today, I am acutely aware that during the last week, the occurrences in areas like Menenberg and Khayelitsha is a clear reminder to us that the role that the Department of Cultural Affairs and Sport play in providing young people an avenue to steer clear of gangsterism or drug abuse. And that link is so vital in terms of the whole of society approach. And we do send our condolences to those that have lost, to the families of those that have lost their lives. And on that note, I want to say again, welcome. It is now 2 o'clock, and this is a committee meeting for cultural affairs and sport. Specifically with cultural affairs, which is both the 13. Thank you so much, members. May I ask that you introduce yourselves for the record? I'll first note members in the House and thereafter members in the online platform.
Good afternoon, Chair and the department. My name is Mesuli Kama. I'm standing in for Member Barnes today.
Good afternoon, Chair, and good afternoon, all the members in the House. My name is Khalil Bankes. Thank you.
Members that are online.
Good afternoon,
Chairperson Deirdre Bartman.
Good afternoon, Chairperson Ricardo Mackenzie, and also Chairperson, I see online there are about 4 or 5 people waiting in the waiting room. If somebody can just let them in. Thanks.
Thank you so much.
Good afternoon, Chair. Member Van Vogel.
Thank you so much, Member Van Vogel, Member Bartman, and Member Mackenzie that is joining online. We do have a quorum. We have received further apologies other than Member Barnes. And I'm actually delighted to announce that as of tomorrow, if all goes well, there will be an additional sporting or cultural or artistic person that will be born into our beautiful province of the Western Cape. So as a committee, we wish Member Ayanda Barnes well, and that all will go well tomorrow during the final preparations for her new journey in her life. So on that note, we will continue. Members, thank you so much. I will now allow the Minister for brief introduction. As if the HOD can just briefly state who is with you. Thereafter, I will go to you for talks and we will take it.
Thank you, Chair and members. Good afternoon, everyone. It's very nice to be here in person. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Guy Redman, HOD, Department of Cultural Affairs and Sport. I just want to record one apology, Mr. Thabo Tutu. We just learned late or early this morning of a bereavement in his family, but he's represented here by Ms. Nicolette Peterson there at the back. Then I'm going to quickly ask my colleagues who are present to just quickly introduce themselves, starting with the CFO.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Brenda Ratkus, Chief Financial Officer.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Lyndon Bauer, Chief Director, Sport and Recreation.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Nomaza Dingayo, Director for Provincial Archives and Record Service.
Good afternoon, everyone. Jackie Bull, Youth and After School Program.
Good afternoon, Luando Ndamo, Management Accounting.
And good afternoon, Nicolette Peterson from Sport Promotion.
Good afternoon, everyone. Paul Hendricks, Director Sport Development.
Maar nou sy sit nou met Dion se boek. Dis loop 'n e-pos gestuur.
You may continue.
Good afternoon, members. Michael Jansen van Rensburg, Director, Museums, Heritage, Geographical Names.
Good afternoon, everyone. Cecilia Sani, Director, Library Service.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jane Malaleki, Director for Arts, Culture and Language.
Good afternoon, Sean Julie, Director, Strategic and Operational Management Support.
Good afternoon, all. My name is Dion Berger. I'm in the head of the department's office. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Do we have any other officials that is joining us online? Members and the department, we have received no request for submissions. However, should any member of the public or organization join us, we will allow that particular person or NGO. As I've stated earlier on, we are here to discuss the Western Cape Appropriation Bill, specifically on cultural affairs and sport. We all understand the rules of engagement. I do want to state once again that we are here to deliberate in such a way that it is not only constructive, but we are able to for the entire vote. We have a time period of 4 hours, as well as for our committee business to be conducted. Minister, I will now allow if there's any opening remarks from your side as well as from the HOD side. Thereafter, I will allow members an opportunity for any clarity-seeking questions or input based on your remarks before we dig into the vote page by page, and I will table. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairperson. From my side, and thank you to our Treasury, because I think in a difficult climate, financial climate, DCAS, you know, we did, if I can say it, we did pretty well. It's difficult, but I'm happy. And also this weekend, we had the Cape Town cycle tour, and I think that's a beginning of all open audiences. Hopefully it will start. It's starting slow, so hopefully we will have more audiences and spectators at all our festivals and theatres. We're looking forward to that. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Chairperson, and good afternoon again to the Chairperson, the members of the Standing Committee, Minister, and also the members of the public and officials. Chairperson, the 2022 MTF budget is premised on prioritizing the recovery of our sectors by aligning it to the Western Cape Recovery Plan and in areas such as jobs, safety, and well-being. Our priorities, and as can be seen in our APP, are social cohesion, creating a shared future and a sense of belonging. The second one is youth and mental well-being, giving youth a sense of purpose and pathways to become productive residents and creating opportunities for well-being. And then the third one is new operating models within the context of the new way of work. The DCAS budget for the 22-23 financial year increased by 37 million from an adjusted budget of 900 million to 937 million in 22-23. The department did not receive additional funding for the impact of the 2021 wage agreement and therefore had to absorb the impact of the wage agreement at a total cost of 4.2 million. Youth development continues to be at the heart of the department's plans. We have received an additional 15 million to mitigate the risk of youth disillusionment in the Western Cape, mainly worsened by the impacts of COVID-19. With the additional funding, DCAS, through its Year Beyond program, plans to address youth unemployment by providing more than 3,000 young people with first work opportunity while they are working to build their work readiness skills so that they can transition into studies or work. And then linked to this allocation, we've also received another 2 million. DCAS has now been given the responsibility to coordinate all youth programs within the Western Cape government, and this 2 million will be used to review and assess the various youth programs within the Western Cape government to then inform prioritization within the youth strategy. The department also received an additional 15 million for the implementation of the holiday program in vulnerable communities to keep children engaged in productive activities during school closures. And then there's 3 other key additional allocations that were made. 1.5 million for the Kango Caves to conduct a feasibility study for the future management of the Kango Caves with the aim of increasing revenue generation to ensure future sustainability. And then a part of that allocation will also go towards a study to determine the amount of funding required for the short, medium, and long-term maintenance of the Kango Caves and surrounding infrastructure. We also received a 1.5 million for the cultural facilities to conduct a feasibility study for a potential PPP at Melkbos this year and Skumanspoor cultural facility to explore the possibility of dual usage model that will incorporate both public and private use of these facilities. Currently, the model includes only public use. And then we received 16 million for the Western Cape Provincial Archives to implement a virtual digital service project to improve access as well as also preservation purposes. And then lastly, and within the context of Minister's input, in the sports, recreation, arts and culture area, an amount of 5 million was allocated for major events. Through these major events, the department will unlock economic opportunities on a local and a regional level. Thanks, Chairperson. We present ourselves to respond to any questions that the members might have. Thank you.
Minister and HOD. Members, on that note, the vote has been circulated yesterday electronically as well as in hard copy. Members are familiar with the standard at once the speech and the vote has been tabled, it is then duly distributed to all. Are dealing with what is commonly known as commencing from pages 675 all the way up to 733. 675 to 733, which is vote. Member Brankhuis.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, I'm just inquiring if there's an extra hard copy in now.
Thank you, Member Brankhuis. I will check now if we are able to arrange that for you.
Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you so much. And as always, our extremely capable procedural officer, Mr. Wasim Matthews, and Assistant Mary Ann Burgess is with us. Members, I will table the first pages, and if there is any question on the opening remarks, pages 675 to 687. I will repeat again, 675 to 687, up until point 2 on 687. Do we have any questions? Any point of clarity?
Chairperson, you just have to look online as well. Our hands are up.
I saw your hand up, sir. I will note Member Ricardo Mackenzie, and then Member Deirdre Bartman, and then Member Kama in that order. Member Mackenzie, you can go ahead.
Thank you, Chairperson, and thank you for the Minister and the team. Minister, thank you for the opening remarks, and yes, sport definitely in keeping our youth busy is definitely one of the priority areas for you, and I do appreciate it. Minister, given that they have extended, I saw the state of disaster again this morning for another 30 days. How will this impact on major events, and will major events, more major events take place in the coming years? And one does appreciate the 5 million rand that your department have allocated. And then the third point, which also I think is on page 675, but the HOD's, the second point, sorry, did speak to that. The additional 15 million rand, does that double the current intake for the Year Beyond program, or just to extend it further? If one can just get clarity on that. And the 2 million rand for the review and access, is that across all department of the whole Western Cape government, or is that in the Department of Cultural Affairs and Sport? Or is that across all the youth programs in the Western Cape government, the 2 million rand that was allocated for the review? And then the 1.5 million rand that you've allocated also on page 675, sorry, page 678, that you also spoke to, about the feasibility study for potential PPE. When I sort of looking at that process, and will that process also entails NGOs and community-based organizations, which I do know use that facility currently for free or pay a minimal amount? And all these programs that you are having a look at, what is the timelines? As the department look at timelines for these years? I know it's obviously for the year coming, but will it happen in the first quarter, the second quarter, the third quarter? If you can just give an indication of that. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Member Kama, and then Member Windvogel.
No, thank you very much, Chair. I think I will have 2 questions for this round. My first question, Chair, would be on page, maybe importantly, Chair, I should once again say that, you know, there's too much that is expected out of this department, but the money does not equal what is the expectation. We are talking about this environment that this department must create, but the money that is allocated really, and it's not only in the province, I must say, even nationally, you look at the allocations that are made to such a department with such expectations. But with that said, Chair, I want to zoom straight to, I think, 682, where I think the last sentence, they talk about the white paper. And I think also in your remarks when you started, you talked about the issue of crime and what this department can do in creating that safe environment. And with this, Chair, I want to understand, because it says the white paper highlights the importance of sports in the efforts to reduce crime. And I want to understand what programs are implemented in the department in line with the view of creating that environment, and specifically in these areas of high crime where we have challenges. Do we have programs that are targeted for such areas? And in line, I want to link this, Chair, with a very disturbing article that I read this morning about a young, I think 15-year-old boy from Hanover Park who nearly did not attend did not attend the Western Cape Provincial, I think the school's athletics competition. And he could not attend because he did not have 2,000 rand to, I think, pay for a kit or something like that. And if you read in the article, you get the sports coordinator from the school who says at some point he was also offered to attend and all expenses were going to be paid for him as a coordinator to attend, and had refused because he does not understand that the expenses for him can be paid, but the young boy needs to play, does not have a 2,000 rand. And the department, I think, responded in the article to say they have paid for your transport and for accommodation and all these things. But what I want to understand in that, Chair, is how do we make these funding decisions? Because for me, it does not make sense to pay for transport and for accommodation, but the participant still needs to get a 2,000 rand to get to that particular competition, you know? And Mr. Hendricks in that and Mr. Hendricks in that article, who's a sports coordinator, makes mention, which is why I'm linking that article, Chair, and I hope I'm not wasting time. He makes mention of a young boy who previously did not attend the tournament. A very talented young boy did not attend the tournament, later dropped out of school, later joined the gang, and later was killed. You know? And this is the pattern in terms of opportunities in the areas that are infested with high levels of crime. So I just want to understand, how are we following the funding that we're making? Because sometimes I have a feeling that we perhaps maybe we give this particular federation or we give this particular organization, but how are we monitoring and ensuring that this funding actually gets through to the young boy or girl that needs to be supported through the funding initiatives of the department, so that they are able to really better their lives and to change the situation in those areas? That's one question, Chair. The other question that I have is just a clarity on I think even Member McKinsey was asking around this. I think on 678, where the department received a 15 million for implementation of holiday programs. Now, I just want to understand, is this a new program, or is it not the same with the program that I think Department of Community Safety used to run around holidays with the religious sector? And what criteria is used really to identify these programs and fund them accordingly? Thanks, Chair.
Member Van Vogel.
Thank you, Chairperson. Chairperson, mine is on page 675, main services and core function therein. What I want to know is there a programmatic approach to building a socially inclusive Western Cape, and how does it deal with the widespread racial divisions, and how does this budget respond to this? Then, Chairperson, also on page 678, the third bullet, point of reference, Traditional and Khoisan Leadership Act. I want to know, is there a clear commitment to establish or set up the House of Traditional and Khoisan Leaders in the province, and what progress has been made in this regard, and how much is budgeted for it? And what the role is the MEC department playing, and why has the Department of Local Government been made the lead department in the implementation of this act? I will park there. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you so much, Member Van Vogel. Member Brankhuis.
Thank you very much, Chair. Chair, because I don't have the copy of the vote in front of me, I do have a question, and it's also relating to the committee and to the department. My question is, I'm from the Strand area, and there's a library that have burned down for the last, I think, more than a year. No efforts has been made in rebuilding that library. And I've heard when the department announced themselves that there is official of the department that is actually have expertise in that sector of libraries. So if I could get an update from the department that how far they are, and if that is a priority in the upcoming budget to restore that library in the Strand area. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you so much, Member Brankhuis. Minister and HOD and officials, I just want to latch onto one, and I think I'm definitely on the same page with Member Kama, because in my engagement with Chief Director as well as today, specifically in terms of the Nova Park young athlete, which in paper, and we have discussed it, so I'm hoping that further clarity will be provided in that reply, because I'm keen to see the communication lines on who is ultimately responsible once any person is identified to participate, and who reaches out to the department. And then I'm covered by the 15 million rand on holiday programs. I just want to double check. It doesn't track back now to January and February. Will that be after April moving forward, the new 15 million rand? And do we have an understanding in which areas that has been earmarked in? And then one particular one, HOD on page 679. In understanding the role, and since your appointment as HOD and the previous HOD, this committee, we understood that DCAS will touch every aspect of everyone's life. And I appreciate the economic and transformation and job creation. I wanted to double check regarding the those that transitioned into employment. Are you able to give us actual figures and where those young people can be found. Pages 6, 7, 9. Members, on that note, I do take this as a first round in terms of pages 675 to 687. And as we go along, we will be seeing how do we cut or how do we put a time allocation based on our input and our questions here this afternoon. So we will be doing it. The Minister and the HOD.
Thank you, Chairperson. I'm going to hand over to HOD.
Thanks, Chairperson. I'm just going to quickly allocate the questions and then I'll begin to respond. The extension of the state of disaster and its impact on major events, Dr. Boer will cover that one. Then the one about, in fact, all the questions about the 15 million allocated either for the youth interventions or for the holiday program. Ms. Jackie Poole will cover that one. I will cover the 2 million for review of the programs, the 1.5 million for the cultural facilities. Ms. Nleleki will cover that. And then Dr. Bo will also cover the white paper, as well as the news article that also troubled us as well as DCAS. But he will provide context and you will be assisted by Mr. Hendricks. Just trying to think which question I haven't allocated. I will cover the questions relating to the Traditional and Khoisan Leadership Act and the provincial houses. And Ms. Cecilia Sani will cover the one about the Strand Library. And yeah, I think that covers all of the questions. And the one of the number of youth which transition into opportunities, Jackie again will cover that one. So just to begin by responding, Chair, the 2 million to review is going to be reviewing all youth programs within the Western Cape government. DCAS has been given the responsibility for coordinating youth interventions within the Western Cape government. It has not taken over the responsibilities of the youth programs in the other departments. So Department of Social Development will continue to lead their programs and so forth. But DCAS will be convening a forum, Western Cape Government Forum, that also has representation in different spaces of organizations that we are working with, whether in the NGO sector, whether it's the federation, etc., all the various partners that we are working with within the context of the whole of society. DCAS will lead that. This 2 million will be used to review all of their programs so that it begins to help us to prioritize those programs and test to the extent to which they are contributing to the strategy and the guidelines and the norms and standards which we have developed. The matter relating to the Traditional and Khoisan Leadership Act, the Western Cape government has every intention of making sure that there's a provincial house of Khoisan and affairs within the Western Cape government. This will be determined by the outcomes of the work of the Commission. The Commission on Khoisan Matters has already begun its work and will start taking applications at the end of this month. The application forms have already been circulated and made available to the community for them to begin to apply for recognition. And depending on the outcomes of this, we are hoping that would be as soon as 2 years, but they have been given 2 to 5 years to do their work. With the outcomes, we'll then see whether there's a need to have a provincial house. For instance, Gauteng has 2 traditional leaders, and because they only have 2, those traditional leaders report into the National House of Traditional Leaders, and there isn't a provincial house in Gauteng. So perhaps a similar method will be used here, but the National House of Traditional Leaders, of course, will provide the necessary guidance. The reason why it is located in the Department of Local Government is that across the board in the country, this matter rests within the Department of, they call it COCTA. In Western Cape, we don't have the traditional affairs part, so we are just called the Department of Local Government. And primarily because most of the issues around traditional leadership are governance issues as opposed to cultural. The cultural issues are important as well, but the key ones are governance issues in terms of the various local government acts and their participation at local government. So that is where it is currently located, and that is the practice throughout the country. I'll now hand over to Dr. Boer to start with the one relating to the impact of the extension of the National State of Disaster on events. We've just come out of an events conference that we had last week Friday that was made up of all the colleagues in the Western Cape government responsible for events, as well as key event organizers within the Western Cape government, within the Western Cape province, sorry, throughout the province, but the people who are running major events, the people who own those events, they were also part of the conversation for us to try and map out a future of events post-COVID. But I'll hand over to Dr. Boer to begin to answer the questions, that question and the other questions that I've allocated to him. Thereafter will be Ms. Boer.
Thank you, HOD, and good afternoon, Chair and members. The question relating to major events is a very important one. We were hoping, of course, that there would also be regulations relating to the spectators that would also be promulgated. But at this stage, I have not seen further than the 2,000 yet. And the discussion about 50% of the venue space is also still a discussion that has been held. In the last year, if I can just go back for a moment, SASCOC introduced a policy or started the draft of a policy for spectators, for businesses, for arts and cultures and conferences, etc. As a Western Cape government, we contributed ourselves, Department of Health, Wescaro, DDAT, we all contributed to that particular spectator policy. But at this stage, it was tabled by at the National Corona Coordinating Council, but we haven't yet received the firm feedback about what type of spectators would be held, the number allowed in stadia. At this stage, the discussion still appears to be 50%. Now, if we have a lack of spectators, this then affects the bottom line of all events. All federations depend on gate takings also to subsidize any of their tournaments. So when we don't have spectators, it means that more sponsorship either from government or from the private sector would be required for events, which does have a negative impact because our funding would have to be spread over a number of events. So the issue of the spectators, the number that is being allowed is important. Even with the cycle tour that took place over this last weekend, they were not allowed their traditional 30,000 cyclists. They were only allowed about a number of 22,000 cyclists. So once you then do the allocation, you'll see that about they charge about 500 Rand to ride the cycle tour. Then they lost about 8,000 members times 500. So it's quite a considerable amount of money. And similarly, last year with the British and Irish Lions tour, there was also a negative economic impact because no spectators were allowed. In this year, Chairperson, the World Cup Sevens is supposed to take place at the stadium here in Cape Town, and all tickets have already been sold out. And for the 3 days of the tournament for the men and women's sevens. So it would really be a disaster if we have to give tickets money back again, if SARA has to give money back. So from our side, the major events, we're still working hard at it. We had chats again with SASCOC on Friday and Saturday, but SASCOC is waiting for the NCC to, of course, give a ruling on that. So, but from our side, we will be working with all event organizers, whether it be the Two Oceans that's coming up over the Easter weekend, whether it be the Knysna Oyster Festival. They are also going to have a physical Knysna Oyster Festival this year. And then we also have, of course, Wales versus South Africa that will take place in Cape Town. The Sevens, we have the Hockey World Cup, Cricket World Cup, and the Formula E. So there's quite a few major events planned, but our department has also received more than 100 applications for assistance that we would then have to crowd in with the 5 million Rand. The second question from Member Kama related to the white paper for sport and recreation. So the white paper for sport and recreation must also be read together with the National Sport and Recreation Plan and Strategic Objective 28 speaks about the use of sport as a tool. So sport as a tool can be used to promote tourism. Sport can be used as a tool also in the fight against crime. What we've done in our department, we've have at the moment street football happening in all the communities that have been affected in terms of the safety plan, the identified communities. We are running street football over weekends in those particular areas. We have an NGO that organizes that on our behalf. And then we also have anti-gang programs that target those high crime areas that have been identified in the safety plan as well. So that is our contribution. And what we also do is we engage with all sport federations that we fund to run some of their programs in those areas as well. The idea is to create a safe space, member Karma, for our athletes and members of the community to attend. The idea is that the federation is also a safe space. You must have the ability to go and participate in sport and recreation and be safe in that community. So we offer the alternatives that exist out there. The last question for me is relating to the newspaper article. And the first, our first port of call is that there are two departments, the education department and ourselves, and education is responsible for what they call level 1, 2, and 3. So level 1, 2, and 3 would be into schools, into class, into house, etc. And we as the department, we are responsible for provincial, district, where trials are held, those who then come into our space. So we would then be part of that particular discussion. And I'm going to ask Mr. Hendricks to come in here to just identify where in the 6 areas this particular scholar and their athletics championship fell into. Thank you, Mr. Redman. I'm not sure if you want to go to Mr. Hendricks immediately.
Thank you, Dr. Bauer. Just to add to that, it's important to also understand that athletics takes place at the inter-house level, inter-school level, inter-district level, and so on. So, and there are 6 different structures. There's a Western Province primary schools, Western Province high schools, Boland primary schools, Boland high schools, SWD primary schools, SWD high schools. So this actual event of the 2,000 Rand was a Western Province athletics meet. And as Dr. Bauer said, that falls within the scope of level 1, 2, and 3. Now, generally, you don't need athletics outfit, special athletics outfit for that. And in our spot investigation, because we're doing a full investigation currently, in our spot investigation, things like talk bags and tracksuits and those things were being asked for, which is not a need at that level. So we are doing a further investigation, and we will give a full report on actually what took place with all the details attached to it. But there's also a conversation that needs to be had between the 2 departments around the roles and responsibilities and exactly, you know, who's benefiting and who's not benefiting by the process. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So just to pick up on the 2 areas of questioning. So the first was around Year Beyond. So the additional 15 million matches some funding that's been received from National, from the Jobs Fund through the Presidential Youth Initiative, and it trebles the program. So we go from 1,000 to 3,201 year-on-years youth on the program this year. So that's just in terms of the scale of the program. The second thing in relation to that is around the transition to studies and work. So from last year's cohort, so last year we had 964 youth on the program. 76% of them have transitioned to either studies or work. We can provide a full list of what they're doing, but about half go and study and half go on to work. Tends to be the trend. And of those who go and study, about 60% stay in the social sector because that's where the program is, and about 40% do other areas of study. Of those who went to work, there was about 130 of them who went into the education system, largely linked to the Teachers Assistance Program that came on board at around the time the program ended. The balance of them went into the community development, financial services, and kind of retail sectors. We have a number of partnerships with the private sector, and we have a career fair at the end of every year in around October, November, and bespoke partnerships. So I'll just give an example of one. We have a partnership, for example, with Yoko, which are those little machines that do the swipe. You can swipe your card. They tended to focus on markets, but they're now breaking into community and township markets. And so 4 of our year-on-years got a job with them. They got issued with a laptop, and they're doing extension work for them, as an example. Another example is we had a partnership with Stats SA around the field work that was taking place, and about 9 of them went into that in particular rural communities. So it's different for each of them, but we have 50 such partners that we have with the private sector that do bespoke opportunities, and then obviously there's some opportunities that people find themselves. But if members want a full list, we can provide that. Then moving on to the holiday program, which was the second area of questioning. So the holiday program was a last-minute addition to our budget last year. So it was a very, very quick turnaround for us. We got the funds and within 2 weeks had to distribute the funding. So it was a very short turnaround. We put the call out to all the organizations we had worked with, and people applied. And the criteria that we used were focused on communities of need. So we looked at levels of poverty in community. Then the overhead costs. So we looked at the cost per learner and the cost per young youth employee, the youth jobs on the program, were the criteria we used to evaluate all the programs. And then obviously compliance, you know, did the organizations were they properly established, and did they have a bank account and stuff. Going forward, the program will be offered again, and now we have much more time to plan. So there'll be a call for a briefing for organizations to come to a briefing so they can find out more about the program, and then there'll be an application process and an adjudication panel.
Thank you, HOD and Chairperson. I will respond to the question on the feasibility study at Schoemanspoort and Melkbos. Just to say that we manage 7 cultural facilities in the province, which NGOs and churches and other community organizations utilize. For those facilities, the income that we receive from the usage for the facilities, that is used for the maintenance of our facilities. However, Public Works does major renovations, etc., and upgrades at the facilities, but we are responsible for the day-to-day maintenance. And over the years, we have look at the trend of the income versus the expenditure, and then notice, or it became evident that we are not collecting sufficient income to be able to keep the facilities at a usable standard. What we've now going to do is that we've looked at our 2 facilities, which in fact all our facilities are located in areas which can attract not only community groupings, but also the business sector and etc. We have the space at all those facilities. So what we're going to do going forward is that we're looking at a feasibility study at our 2 facilities, the one which is located at Melkbos, the other one located at the foot of the Congo Cave in Oudtshoorn. And that study aims at looking at a possible dual usage model. And what that aims at doing is not to exclude our community groupings from using the facilities, but to still have our current users, but then also bring in new users to the facilities. In terms of the tariffs, we will keep the tariffs low for community groups and individuals from indigenous communities. However, we will then up our tariffs for the private sector, so that we are able to give the same services to communities as well as to those that will use the facilities from the private sector. So at no point in this new approach, we were going to exclude our current users. We will do everything in our capacity to maintain our current users so that they also have the joy of using our facilities, as well as enjoying the environment in which our facilities are located. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Just to answer the question about the Strand Library that burned down. So in this budget, no allocation has been made for it to be rebuilt. When it did burn down, we did work with the City of Cape Town to see if there's other facilities close by or areas where we could provide some kind of service to the community, but there weren't any that we could identify. We were informed by the City of Cape Town that they first have to clean the erf. There's a lot of rubble and then the foundations and everything, and they're actually still in the process of identifying a service provider and getting that done before they will then look at putting into their business plan a bid to build another library and the scope and the size of the new library. So at the moment, their focus is on cleaning that erf. So we haven't, there's nothing in the budget for a new library yet.
And then, thank you, Chair. I think we've covered all of them. And just in closing, the one about the widespread racial division. We have within our APP a very important program called Community Conversations. And that is a program that is meant for us to have very difficult conversations. And one of those is normally around race. It happens throughout the province, and we decide based on which communities may require it. And we work in partnership with a group of people appointed by the National Minister of Arts and Culture called Social Cohesion Advocates. And they work with the communities. We have these conversations and trying to get communities to understand each other better, to appreciate each other better. And that's the power that our department has. You know, it is able to bring people together that would not normally be together and have them have these conversations in a safe environment where they can all be honest with each other, but get a better appreciation of each other. The bulk of our other cultural programs as well serve to do this. So whether we are supporting a real dance competition, etc., we try and use all of those platforms to try and get people from different communities to experience these cultural programs and have a better understanding of each other. The sports programs, especially the ones that are targeted at youth, the mass participation ones, are specifically targeted at building these long-lasting relations at this level, so that as youth grow up, they have a better appreciation of each other. Youth from different schools participating in various activities, whether it is the after-school activities or the more organized and planned ones. And then within the museums, to try and bring us into the context of our national symbols, because as a nation, we need to have the same purpose, same vision. And one of the things that normally draw us together are the national symbols. And you will see in our APP, there's a program that focuses specifically on the national symbols within our museums. Thank you very much, Chair.
Minister and HOD and officials, thank you so much. Members, before we proceed, just some brief comments from me in terms of the call for a briefing. I think it will be very helpful if via our procedural officer, if such information is sent out to partners, if members can. I think as a standard, we have received a whole lot of assistance from Dr. Bauer, and that once we get those information, we can also share it with contacts where members are working, and that just makes it easier because a whole lot of members are receiving requests and could go via the official. I think that will be extremely helpful. And then in terms of the partners as well as the full list, that was mentioned on the Year Beyond program. I think we can put that request for information in. But members, I'm covered on the questions that I've posed. Is there any particular follow-up question? Any particular follow-up question in terms of what was answered here? I see we have member Mackenzie and then member Marais has joined us. Member Marais, thank you so much for your attendance here today and for joining us discuss the appropriation bill for the Western Cape, specifically the vote on cultural affairs and sport. Please feel welcome. I will now note you, sir.
Thank you very much, members. Sorry for being late. I couldn't be here earlier, but we did tender an apology. The thing that struck me is that since 1994, I've been waiting to see whether a South African culture will emerge, which will indicate we are in the process of building one nation. The question I want to put to the department is the cultural, is that the aim of the department? Or are we going to promote separate cultures? Can somebody just close up that mic and keep on interrupting? I just want
Marais, can I just quickly, members as well as officials that is online, we will try our best in order to mute anyone once we hear a particular voice. However, I will encourage anyone that is online to please be aware that their finger may slip and they may put on their video or their mic, and we might hear something that we are not supposed to hear or see something. We would want to keep this meeting above board, but we will try our best, Member Marais, that once we hear a voice to mute all participants as quickly as possible, and then we will unmute you or the relevant speaker at the time. Member Marais, you may continue.
Thank you, Chairperson. Thank you very much. I will submit to your very sensible ruling. Are we busy proving that South Africa consists of 11 cultures and that there's no South African culture with our policies? Or are we trying to move this country to a position where we share a common culture? How many of colored children and African children know Jukskei? What is Jukskei? And how many of other cultures, what they do we know? And that is why we keep on emphasizing our differences, because most of our differences lies in culture. Is it the aim of this department to emphasize the culture of the Griqua, the Khoi, the Goringikwa, and the Nama, and the culture of Zulus or Xhosa separately, and spend money on financing each culture? Or do we have a basic plan that all cultures must sort of learn of each other's cultures? That's all I would like to ask. The rest I will ask in a debate in the House.
Thank you so much, Member Marais. We are always delighted to have a former Premier and Mayor within our committee. Thank you so much, members. On that note, is there any follow-up question or clarity seeking point that you have at this particular stage? We are still dealing with pages 675 to 687. 675 to 687. Member Kama and then Member Mackenzie. Member Mackenzie, your hand is lowered since. Member Marais, your hand is also still up. I'll acknowledge it directly. Oh, there we go. Member Kama.
No, thanks, Chair, and let me appreciate the responses so far. My question now is on 685, Chair. I think at the bottom where it talks about empowering our people, I want to ask on the rural library connectivity project. I want to know if what is the number of the libraries that are connected in the rural areas. Do we have a backlog in that? If there is a backlog, how will this budget assist, you know, in trying to respond to that? Thanks, Chair.
Thank you so much, Member Kama. To wrap up this part, from my sense, I know the Minister spoke extensively on page 6 regarding the initiation process and program most recently. I think it should be highly commendable based on the success rate, and that we have seen that no participant lost their lives during the last summer season for the initiation process, which is an amazing feat. If you are able to speak on that particular, I think that will be helpful for members and the way forward in that regard. But I'm covered in terms of all my points. I see Member Mackenzie and Vin Vogel. Before we wrap up this particular part.
Thank you, Chairperson. Can you hear me now?
Ons kan u duidelik hoor.
Baie dankie. Chairperson, I just got two follow-up questions. One is, first of all, thank you to the department for that trebling the increase from 1,000 to 3,000 intakes. And I'm not sure if you've mentioned it, but where can one, or when will they start advertising those details so one can share it in our communities? And then the second question is around the commission that is doing the investigation into the Khoisan, the house, etc., etc. Chairperson, we've known that, unfortunately and terribly, that we had a known gangster who became a Khoisan king, a very well-known gangster who is not with us anymore. But I wanted to know, is there a police capacity to investigate, or when they look at the commission and look at the legitimacy at some of these Khoisan or Nama or traditional leaders, to avoid any element with connections to known drugs or abalone associations not become part of these institutions? Is there going to be some element to look at those aspects of it? Because that well-known gangster that we all know who it is has managed to buy his way into, was now late, managed to buy his way into a king of the Khoisan. I don't even know what his full title was. But is there going to be some element to avoid his son or associates become part of these institutions in the future? Thank you.
Thank you, Member Mackenzie. Member Vin Vogel.
Thanks, Chair. I just want to slash on to the initiation issue. I just want to know from the department, how is the department addressed the lack of available land for the initiations in the province? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you so much. Members, on that note, Member Marais' input and comment will be addressed by the department or the minister, as well as the follow-up clarity seeking questions. Directly thereafter, we will then proceed 687 onwards. Over to the department.
All right. Thank you very much, Chair. Let's start with Member Marais' question. That one, we align ourselves with the coat of arms, which says unity in diversity. So in culture, diversity is very important, because culture informs how we see the world, how we process things around the world, and how we think. And we want, as a nation, to have very many ways of thinking through things. Because when we have very many ways of thinking through things, we are better positioned to progress. We are not thinking the same, and that is a value that must be protected. And we need to protect all cultures, give them the space to grow, and create space for people to be exposed to other cultures so that they respect other cultures. So it's very important that you create that space for all of us to learn from each other, but at the same time, make sure that all cultures are given the space to grow, flourish, people from different cultures given the space to express themselves in their cultures without being asked to change for whatever reason. So unity in diversity, diversity being very important for DCAS, and we are being, of course, being informed by the coat of arms. The initiation process was really, I mean, this was the most difficult one we've had to do because it was under pandemic conditions. The summer initiation, just for information of the members, is always the one where we tend to lose more lives than the winter season. And one of the major contributing factors there is dehydration. And this time we were doing that with the same weather as we've had before, but with the pandemic in place. But the success there is around collaboration. We had a very strong, formidable team made up of the department, other departments within the Western Cape government, such as Department of Health, Department of Social Development, we had the SAPS. Then we had our communities. We had the traditional leaders, we had the initiation forums, and a whole lot of other community structures that made sure that this was successful, made sure that our boys were prepared well in advance for the season, and also we co-owned the protocols. We co-developed the protocols, COVID-19 protocols that were approved by national, but those were developed with the traditional leaders, with the Somakwaza Institute and the initiation forums. They sponsored what the protocols would look like, and then they were able to police those protocols to make sure. And of course, you would go to from site to site, and you'd find in certain instances the protocols are not being followed. We have a monitoring role as a department, and would make sure that those were followed. For the better part, they were followed, and I think that was a major contributor to the success. On the land issue, it's a difficult one. And that is why, as DCAS, we are participating in all municipal spatial development framework programs. When we get invited, we go there because we want to encourage municipalities to be proactive in thinking about initiation. So if there's any housing development that is being proposed, it must be thought of upfront that appropriate land must be made available for initiation. A shining example in this case is the Stellenbosch municipality, which has set aside land for initiation, puts out a call to the public to let them know that they cannot visit that site during a particular period because the sacred practice is currently being undertaken. So it's an open piece of land where communities would normally walk, but during the initiation season, they are not allowed to. And that is a municipality that has been very proactive in supporting the initiation forums. And we are hoping that others will follow. We are currently in discussions with the city of Cape Town for a site. Is it Jane? Site?
Nyanga Junction.
Nyanga Junction initiation site. And we are in talks with the city to see how this site could be managed by DCAS. They would then provide the services, the water, ablutions, and then DCAS would make sure that we in partnership with the local initiation forum, manage that site for its intended purpose. And that is the model we're looking at going forward, that it's got to be pre-planned, it mustn't be it's got to be by design, so that communities don't also use sort of take up this when you have the land, the unlawful land occupations that tend to happen from time to time. That this must not straddle onto community land for initiation. The Commission on Khoisan Matters' work is very thorough. And they have a research team that works with them, but also the Act itself does not allow anybody with a criminal record to occupy any position within the structures of traditional or Khoisan leadership. So that will, the vetting and all of that will definitely form part of the process in terms of the Act, and will cover any such cases. Can I now ask Ms. Sani to just talk through the connectivity protocol?
Yes, so currently we have 229 libraries that's connected through the Rural Library Connectivity Project. We don't really have a very big backlog. A lot of the smaller libraries in the smaller rural areas don't have space to accommodate open access PC. So they're small little modulars or wheelie wagons on farm libraries that we count as a library point, but that can't accommodate it yet. The others might not have infrastructure yet, and we're working with the Department of the Premier with their broadband initiative. So as they're rolling out the infrastructure, we're connecting the libraries to it. And every new library that is built in the rural area is immediately connected. So there's not a very big backlog, and we're working with the broadband initiative. Thanks.
Thank you so much.
Sorry. Can I just add on the adverts, when the adverts are going out, because we haven't answered that one. Just to say that there are currently some adverts out and there are others going out tomorrow and then again at the end of the month. All the adverts are put out on SA Youth Mobi. So all the opportunities that are available are advertised on SA Youth Mobi. So at any point you can tell your constituents to check, to register on SA Youth Mobi and then to check the available opportunities. We put them out in batches so that each opportunity is put out separately. And they always have the geographic areas that the opportunities are in, so that, because obviously people get a small stipend and it wouldn't make sense for them to travel big distances, so they can look at what's coming up in their areas. The ones that are going out tomorrow will be for non-metro opportunities. And then, yeah, they'll go out again in a couple of weeks' time again.
Thank you so much. Members, on that note, we have concluded the first batch of pages from 675 to 687. We will now proceed and I will table 688 up until 708, until 708. Members, do you have any questions on that particular pages? I see Member Bartman.
Thank you, Chair. Can I go ahead?
Yes, Member Bartman. Thank you.
Thank you so much. On page 704, under the topic of Cradle of Human Culture, relating to the archaeological and paleontological heritage tourism route, I just wanted to find out what specifically that funding would be for in terms of that tourism route, as well as how this would assist with increasing domestic tourists to that particular heritage route. And then on page 707, I see there that we give the Artscape a transfer of 202,000 Rand this year, and that every financial year, more or less, we give the Artscape about 200,000, and that last year was an anomaly, I see, with approximately 600,000. If I could just get some clarification what the 200,000 is for specifically, what the anomaly was for, the reason they received the increased last year of about 400K more than usual, and how do they receive the funding? Do they apply and then they receive funding, or do we just allocate funding? How does the transfer to that particular entity work? Thank you.
Thank you so much, Member Bartman. I see Member Kama.
Thank you very much, Chair. My question would be, the first one would be just a clarity on the, I think 691 on the MOD program. If there are any plans within this budget to increase the number of schools that participate in the program. The other question that I have, Chair, on page 694, where on sport, it talks about establishing or building on the established partnerships with municipalities across the province. Now, what I want to check is how much budget is allocated in this budget to ensure that. And also, Chair, what I want to understand, I think Dr. Boer would remember the question I even asked in our visit in the West Coast. Now, what I want to understand, Chair, in this partnership and also through the MIG program, which is your municipal infrastructure grant, how are we making sure that when municipalities apply for a grant, it is indeed to ensure that we revamp the facilities in these areas where they are needed the most, you know, and perhaps if we can get an understanding of the approved projects in the province and where are they situated. I'm asking this, Chair, in light of the environment that we're talking about, a safer environment that we want to create, because many recreational and sporting facilities in these troublesome areas, if I may use those words, they are now turned into gang battlefields. You know, if you go to Elsis River or Ravensmead, you will get your what is this place now? I just forgot the name, where the two gangs would meet and fight. It's like their battle field. So I want to understand, in terms of that MIG program, how are we as a department, through our partnership and also using this program, ensuring that we guide municipalities in responding to the need to really build proper infrastructure in your previously disadvantaged areas? Thanks, Chair.
Thank you so much, Member Kama. I don't want to miss this opportunity to make a comment. I love the fact that we are able to engage, and to quote Member Kama, how do we as a department? I think it's very significant. Thank you so much, Member Kama, because that's ultimately what we want to foster here. I see Member Brinkhuis, and then we have Member McKenzie and Member Van Vogel.
Thank you very much, Chair. Chair, on page 694, in the second paragraph on the sport, the focus for the upcoming financial year 22-23 is to continue building on established partnerships with municipalities across the province to ensure sport infrastructure development. Now, Chair, I just spoke earlier about the situation with the library in Strand, because I'm from the Strand area. Now, just next to the library, there's a sports facility, sports ground there called the Ebertua Sports Ground. There's a great frustration on the ground there at the moment in the Strand community with regard to the sports facility. Now, I want to know from the department, is there anything indicated in the budget for this upcoming year to help in terms of securing that sports facility for the Strand community? Like I said, there's a great frustration, and I've also heard that I got a hint in the area from the ward councillor that soon they might be closing down. The city of Cape Town might be closing down that sports facility. So if I could get from the department an indication that what is the actual plans with that sports facility, the Ebertua Sports Grounds in Strand, and if there is any allocation in the budget for that sports facility. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, Member Brinkhuis. Member McKenzie, and then Member Van Vogel.
Thank you, Chairperson. I'm covered. I'm covered. Thank you.
Van Vogel.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, my question is on page 688. The heading review of the current financial year 2021-2022. What I want to know, given the impact of COVID-19 to artists and museums, why is the department only continuing to support museums with a grant in aid and no intervention is made for struggle artists and athletes? Then the second question is on page 689, the last paragraph. How does the department deal with the risk of heritage sites like the Black River Park being taken over by greedy property developers? What other sites are at risk and how is the department protecting them? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you so much, Member Winvogel. If I can just go to 699 in terms of the transfers, and we do know that under the department is so vital, a big jump for the Heritage Western Cape. Are you able to explain if there's any additional or new matters in that regard for Heritage? It was from it's now at 1537. Thank you. Over to the HOD and the department.
Thank you, Chairperson. With the Cradle of Human Culture, Mr. van Rensburg is just going to provide details about that amount. But just for context for the members, DCAS has submitted documentation to UNESCO for completeness checking as part of a process to have these sites in the Western Cape and one site in KwaZulu-Natal declared World Heritage Sites. The process is in an advanced stage and was approved by the National Cabinet on the 9th of February for submission to UNESCO, and it will be submitted to UNESCO in February 2023. And hopefully, if all goes well, in the UNESCO meeting in July that year, those sites, 2 sites in Western Cape, 1 site in KwaZulu-Natal, will be approved as World Heritage Sites. The other sites, there are about 6 of them in that submission. The other 3, another one in the Western Cape, 1 in Eastern Cape, and the last one in KZN, will be approved in the next round. But we are now prioritizing the first 3 sites, and then Mr. van Rensburg will talk to us about what that funding will go towards. The funding that normally we provide to the Artscape is for basic maintenance, lights and things like that. Artscape belongs to the Western Cape government, the facility itself, but the entity is a national entity. But the building belongs to the Western Cape government, and we have an agreement, an official agreement between Department of Public Works, DCAS, and Artscape on how we manage it. And how we support programs in the Artscape. It's all in terms of that agreement, but Ms. Mleki will talk about that anomaly from last year. Dr. Bowe will cover, together with Mr. Hendricks, the MOD program question, as well as the sports grounds question. Coming to the support for museums and arts organizations, we have a separate fund for arts organizations. And this year, or rather in June 2021, we approved a new policy. Having learned from our COVID-19 experience, we would normally only support NGOs. We now also support individual artists. So an artist can apply as an individual to the department for work of art that they want to do, or write a book, or write a script for theater, or fine arts, whatever the case may be, they can apply as an individual. We've also added another element where certain organizations that are in the eventing space can also apply. So it's no longer limited to NGOs. And it's not only, and we're only specifically saying organizations that are into doing arts events, not any other form of events. The museums then have their own funding, which in terms of the ordinance, they are able to support museums that affiliate to the Western Cape government through that act, which was recently been updated last year in April. So I'll ask Mr. van Rensburg to just talk about what is it that we do to try and protect the various heritage sites within the Western Cape government. So first to go up will be Ms. Mleleki, and then Michael Janse van Rensburg will answer his 2 questions, and then we'll close off with Dr. Bowe.
Okay, HOD. Can I request through HOD and CFO that we get back to the amount for Artscape, the additional 500,000? Yeah, if I can just get an opportunity to do that.
Okay, sure.
excuse me. Thank you very much, HOD. The first question on the cradle of culture, the 815,000 that's mentioned in the report is for the development of infrastructure at the various sites and also for the conservation of the sites and the development of the interpretation center. I can perhaps just give members some background. So there's 3 sites in the Western Cape. It's the one at Deep Kloof, the one in Blombos, and the one at Pinnacle Point. Specifically, we are looking at currently developing the infrastructure and the conservation management at the one in Deep Kloof, which is close to Elands Bay. If you've ever been to the site, you'll see, you know, it's a cave, it's semi-exposed, and it's on land that requires a lot of infrastructure to actually make it accessible to tourists and people that would like to visit the site. So we need to install walkways and those type of things. The site itself needs some conservation measures before it can be opened more widely to the public. And then we also would like to fit out the interpretation center that is planned in Elands Bay that will basically give the narrative and the story behind the caves as part of the tourism route. On the second question, with regards to what is the department doing to protect heritage sites, the department manages and funds the entity Heritage Western Cape, which I'm also the CEO of. And we have to ensure that we implement the National Heritage Resources Act. In terms of the Act, we have 2 types of protection. You have a general protection, and then you have formal protections. Now, any site of provincial or potential provincial significance can be nominated to Heritage Western Cape, which we can investigate and then potentially go through the process of having it declared as a provincial heritage site, which adds additional formal protection to that site. If such a site, after it's been declared, is then vandalized or not properly maintained, etc., it offers the site further protection that we, in our relationship with the enforcement authorities, such as the SAPS, can take relative or necessary action in that regard. And then the third question on the additional funding for HWC. The funding has been increased in the next financial year in order to ensure that HWC has enough or sufficient funds for its contingent liability. HWC sometimes have to go to court on heritage-related matters, and potentially, if we lose a case, for example, we could be held liable for legal fees, etc. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Is there any? Dr. Bauer.
Thank you. I'm going to respond to Member Karma's question, Chair. There were 2 parts. I'll deal with the mod center, the last one. I'll deal with the facilities first. So in terms of our budget, we have 2 million rand for equitable share. And the reason for this is that in terms of Schedule 5 of the Constitution of the Republic 1996, local facilities fall under municipalities. So what we have is we have a funding that we contribute towards the upgrade or construction of facilities. But of course, you will appreciate 2 million rand will not buy much of a building. But in the smaller municipalities, they need sometimes the contribution from provincial government as well. In this financial year, I would just like to indicate to you that Witzenberg was allocated 1 million rand, and that was for the upgrade of Prince Albert Hamlet netball and tennis facilities. So that goes with the Netball World Cup 2023 and continues part of the legacy as well. Then we also have floodlight facilities for 4 facilities in Stellenbosch, 219,000. And then for George, we have spectator pavilions in Thembalethu and spectator pavilions in Taus-Ranton. So those are some of the aspects that we contribute to. It's of course not the whole amount that they need, but when they apply for funding, all municipalities have an opportunity between 1 July each year until 30 September, and a 3-month period in which they can apply for funding in our next financial year. And then we would then look at the applications and do that. Then, Chair, the second question that Member Kama asked us in terms of the MIG funding. The MIG funding is administered by the Department of Local Government. Our role as the Department of Cultural Affairs and Sport is to assist in the appraisal and to make sure that any facility that is built with the requisite norms and standards that has been laid down for that particular code of sport or the facility. What we will do, Chair, on behalf of Member Kama, is to request local government to send a list of MIG funding, because we don't administer that. There's a chief director that administers that, but I will certainly write to him tomorrow and ask him to send it to Mr. Wasim for the chair. Then there is a third level of funding, which is called direct allocation, in which the municipalities can apply directly to our National Department of Sport, Arts and Culture, and that's colloquially called COCTA funding. So there's an amount of 300 million rand that has been set aside for any municipality or municipalities in South Africa to apply. And if you just allow me, I will tell you which municipalities will be receiving funds. In 21-22, Theewaterskloof received funding, and that they used, let me just get that. Yeah. So Theewaterskloof received funding, and that was 7.8 million, and I think they're using it for Pineview in Grabouw. So that is Theewaterskloof. Then for the year 22-23, Oudtshoorn received funding for the upgrade of Bongaletu sport grounds, and that was 10 million rand. 22-23, Breede Valley, upgrading of the Vet Sport Grounds and upgrading of Rosenville Sport Grounds, 8 million. Then 22-23, Swartland, upgrading of Darling and Chatsworth Sport Fields, 10 million. Then Hessequa, 22-23, construction of new cricket and soccer facility in Heidelberg. And then 22-23, Neisner, construction of sport field and sport facilities in Bungani, phase 2, 11 million rand. So those are the direct allocations that we, again, play a monitoring role with the national department. We would go with them to inspect the facilities, look at how far the foundation phase is, because they, of course, pay out in terms of how far you are with various tranches within that. They don't give the municipality the entire amount upfront, and municipalities are supposed to, after a period of 4 to 5 months, have spent 40% already of this money. So that's a direct allocation, and I'm quite happy to send the direct allocations to Member Kama or to the chair. But in terms of the equitable share, it's in the book that I read out, and then of course the MIG allocation we'll ask for. The second question related to the City of Cape Town. In terms of the City of Cape Town, in the last 10 years, we haven't really funded the City of Cape Town, because the City of Cape Town is eligible for other funding besides the MIG. They, as a metro, they get other funding. But what we would do on behalf of the member is I will engage tomorrow morning with my colleague there. His name is Jan Fourie, and I will write to Jan and ask him about Strand, the abattoir sport facility, and what their intention is. And once I have that response, I will send it to the chair as well. But at this stage, I don't bear any knowledge of the City of Cape Town, what they have for their facilities, because of course they will table it at their council meeting at the requisite time. What we have done is that we opened 2-3 years ago, we contributed funding towards the Stephen Regan netball facilities, where we upgraded the locker rooms and the toilets at the netball facilities as part of the legacy for the Netball World Cup. But at this stage, we will certainly write tomorrow morning to Mr. Fourie. And then in terms of the mod program, we've got 181 mod centers, and we also have 134 neighboring schools. So we can only have more schools as the budget allows. And that is why we haven't expanded too heavily, too fast, because we need to have an incremental approach. And I will just ask with the consent of the HOD if Mr. Hendricks can take that question further on the mod centers.
Just to add to that, the concept of the neighboring schools is using the mod center as a nucleus, and the neighboring schools would be those schools in closest proximity to each other around that mod center. So that creates a cluster of schools, and because they're in the closest proximity to each other, the youngsters can then walk from one school to the other to play against each other. So that's the idea that we're following. Thank you.
Thank you so much, members. I trust that we have exhausted those pages that I've tabled in terms of 688 to 708. It is now 3:30. Members, we will take a brief 15-minute break. Tea and coffee has been arranged, and thereafter we will then deal with pages 709 until 716. But I want to ask your indulgence that I table the entire vote, which include the annexures from 717 to 733. So in other words, the entire vote will be tabled as soon as we arrive back from a break, but we will commence from pages 709. I trust that that is all in order. Thank you again for those that are online. Stakeholders, thank you, as well as our very capable interpreters and sign language interpreters as well. You are more than welcome to join us for coffee and tea as well. So we will be back at 10 to. At 10 to 4, we will convene again. Thank you so much. Cultural Affairs and Sport, and we are specifically dealing with the appropriation bill and vote for Cultural Affairs and Sport. My name is Regan Allen, Chairperson of the Standing Committee. We have the department with us as well as a number of the members present and our procedural officers. We will commence in the next 45 seconds. Thank you so much to the members as well as the department for the engagement so far in terms of our discussion and deliberations here this afternoon. We will promptly commence where we left off. We are dealing with pages 709 to 716, but I'm tabling the annexures as well, which is pages 717 until the end, 733. I was requested by one member if he can ask one additional question on the previous slide. And because we believe in fostering that engagement, I will allow Member Kama to get in his last question for the previous pages that were tabled. Member Kama.
No, thank you very much, Chair. My question is actually on page 698, table 8.1. I see there, Chair, there is a decrease in terms of the budget for the library and archive services. And if you go to 694, in terms of your service delivery risks, you would find that there's also a major service delivery risk that is noted there of an inability to implement legal mandate with regards to the provision of public library services. And there is mitigation that is cited by the department now. But I want to check this decrease, therefore, would it not have an impact, you know, in terms of, because while it's identified as a risk, I understand in mitigating that risk, you would need resources. So what would be the impact of this decrease and generally on the service of libraries? Thanks, Chair.
Thank you so much, Member Kama. Members online, I please request your indulgence. I will just go back to Member Kama. Is there any further question on the pages that were now tabled? 709, 716, including the annexures. Thereafter, I will note Member Bartman as well as Member Mackenzie.
No, thank you very much, Chair, for that. I thought you were giving me only for those pages. But the other question that I have, Chair, on 713, table 9.4, in terms of number 6 there of youth programs. I think I see it's a new sub program. Now, what I want to understand is what will the budget be spent on and the breakdown in terms of the province, you know, municipalities, if that would be easy to relate to. And what are there any plans to increase the budget of or sport in general in your school sports? Thanks, Chair.
Thank you so much, Member Kama. I see Member Bartman and Member Mackenzie in that order.
Thank you so much, Chairperson. Chair, my first question is on page 713. It relates to the item of the Netball World Cup. It indicates on that page that in this financial year that we are allocating 5 million, in the next financial year 5.2 million, and in 2024-2025 5.4 million. Relating to these amounts, I wanted to find out what these amounts are for specifically, where the schools and organizations will be participating in some way during the Netball World Cup. If so, how will some of this money be allocated to that? And finally, also just a little bit unclear why we're allocating 5.4 million rand in 2024-2025, given that the Netball World Cup is in 2023. So if I could just get some clarity surrounding that. Also, just a general note, given that the Netball World Cup will be next year, how far are our preparations in this regard? It's very seldom that a World Cup of this type of nature comes around, and we do need to make the most of it. So if we can just get some clarity in that regard. And then on page 732, as part of the annexures under library and archive, I see there that for Beaufort West Municipality that 6.7 million rand is being allocated for this particular program and 1.6 million for Laingsburg. And Chairperson, you must please excuse me if I'm incorrect, but Beaufort West Municipality is currently being officially investigated under section 106, and I think another section of the Constitution, I think it's 139, as a dysfunctional municipality, and that the financial recovery plan has already been approved by both Provincial Treasury and the National Treasury. So I would just like to understand, will these funds be given to a municipality that year after year has been receiving qualified audits and is under official investigation because of maladministration and wasteful expenditure? Is it not possible for the department to simply provide the service to the municipality instead of transferring the funds? And I have a similar question regarding the Laingsburg amount of approximately 1.6 million rand on that page. It's my previous constituency, who also that municipality also gets qualified audits year after year after year. In fact, I'm not exactly sure what they did with the previous money that the DCAS department gave them for that sports field. And I'm not sure if I truly got an answer from Scopa last year as to what exactly the final amount was allocated for. But I have a great concern for the transfer of such huge amounts to municipalities who have proven that they are unable to, one, spend the money in the manner that it has been allocated, and two, that is unable to account when the money arrives. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Bartman. Member Mackenzie.
Thank you, Chairperson. I just wanted to got a couple of questions. One is the output as per the APP on page 712. With regards to the sports and recreation plan that is now coming up for review, what input is the department going to do? And is there a public participation process that's going to happen if anybody else want to give input into that plan? And I don't expect them to have the full input right now, obviously. I can imagine Advocate Boas thinking he didn't prepare for this. But I just wanted to know what is the process going to follow? And with regards to the Better Together game and the older persons game and those sort of things that have really impacted our communities pre-COVID, what has happened to the older persons game the last year, and what kept our older persons, our seniors, busy? Because I know some of them outran me at like some of these games a few years ago. And then on page 718 and also the subsequent annexures, I presume these are probably the 15 millions, the 2 million, but I just wanted to get clarity. On page 718, the consultants' fees has increased to 33 million rand, a 236% increase, and then the contracts also increased, 42% increase. And then the venues and facilities, there's also a 99% increase. I presume that could possibly be the 1.5. So we can just get clarity on those. And then I see that we budgeted 600,000 rand for legal costs. What are we anticipating? Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you so much, Member Mackenzie. If I can just latch on to Member Bartman's question. Last year, HOD, a reply also came back regarding Laingsburg municipality, a transfer of 717.350. The purpose of this funds was the refurbishment and upgrade of the sports field, which include rugby and soccer field, netball courts, and athletic tracks, including a new irrigation system at the JJ Ellis Sports Ground. I just want to double check. The municipality confirmed that the full amount has been spent. Has that been triple checked that it has actually been spent and there's upgrades at that particular venue, JJ Ellis Sports Ground? Thank you.
Chairperson, I do apologize. I had one more question that I didn't ask. Sorry, may I ask it?
You may go ahead, sir.
Sorry, the training on page 716, which is, I presume, for the departmental officials, has been fairly constant. And has this training moved online, and what sort of training are we providing? Thank you.
Over to the department and the minister.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. The first one on the youth programs, that was budget that was already sitting under management. And because of this responsibility which DCAS had been given to lead the youth program, we've then pulled that budget out. It was already there and created its own sub-program for it. And then Ms. Poole will talk further about some of the questions that you were asking on it. Are there any plans to increase the school sports one? Dr. Bowe will cover that one. And then the 5 million for netball, Dr. Bowe is going to cover that one, as well as the context around those allocations and what they'll be used for, and also give us an update on the updates for the Netball World Cup. The funds to the Beaufort West Municipality and Laingsburg in the library space, those funds are primarily for staff that we have working in the library. Those are funded posts. In Beaufort West, we have 27. In Laingsburg, we've got 7, and in Prince Albert, 7. And those are people whose salaries we support through the conditional grant. The engagements between the Western Cape government and those municipalities and the challenges they're experiencing are being handled through the head of treasury as well as the head of local government, and all departments through their intervention decide whether or not to provide the relevant funding to those municipalities for the various programs, and we are being guided by them. But given that our support to these two municipalities is primarily for warm bodies, we cannot risk those people not being paid their salaries. So we are still providing that money to those municipalities. Then I'll ask Dr. Bowe to cover Member Mackenzie's questions, and then CFO to cover the questions around the legal costs as well as the consultants' fees, and then Dr. Bowe to do the update on JJ Ellis. Okay, over to you, Dr. Bowe.
Thank you. So in terms of the school sport, our national conditional grant framework sets aside 40% of the framework for school sport. So when we get, as we are getting 88 million from the conditional grant framework, 40% of that is dedicated to school sport. So at this moment, what we are doing, though, it is still not sufficient for us as a province. And in most cases, we need to top up some of the school sport with equitable share, which is in fact what we do. And Chair and members, the reason why to a large extent, the funding that we have for school sport is insufficient is that in the last 10 years, this province has not hosted a single national summer or winter games. And once you start doing the calculation in terms of our travels, then we have to spend close to 13, 14 million rand on travels because there are 16 priority codes, and all those codes have to be serviced by going to the winter or summer games, either in Durban or in Pretoria or Gauteng, Pretoria or Johannesburg, because they interchange which of the university facilities they use. So this means that inevitably we have to dip into any equitable share that we have to give for that. So at this stage, even though you may not see it on this budget, we use different equitable shares just to assist with our school sport because of the travel The distance between Cape Town and Johannesburg is 1,564 kilometers, and that is a great cost, whether you fly or whether you take a bus, because of the number of athletes that need to go to these events as well. So at this stage, we always mooting, and we will look forward to the census, because part of the formula for the conditional grant is in fact the number of people staying in the province. And at this stage, National has indicated that the Western Cape province has moved to 6.8 million people, which would place us third in terms of conditional grant framework. But in fact, we only get the fifth biggest share of the conditional grant framework. So that is a real question in that regard. But certainly we would advocate each time we can that more funding will be made available. And I'm hoping, with the assistance of our CFO, in the next 2 months to send to National a proposal to increase the allocation, because our 10 million for school sport we receive annually, but Gauteng, that hosts all the events, they also receive 10 million. So in effect, you have it's a bit unequal, because they would always then have more funding. In terms of the Netball World Cup, so we took a bit of a knock with COVID, in that we couldn't do as much as we could during the COVID period in our preparation. However, I'm pleased to report that on the 15th of February, a CFO started formally as a member of the LOC, and he started, and his office is at 2 Long Street, Cape Town. The Netball World Cup board is renting a suite of offices there, and that is now the hub of our activity for the Netball World Cup. It is envisaged that there will be people seconded to that in the next 3 months that will then work full-time on the Netball World Cup. At the moment, both the city and the province, we have people working on the World Cup from our offices at the moment, but at a given stage, a national, local, and provincial, as well as the netball fraternity, will second people to the Netball World Cup. On the 23rd of March, which is next week, I, together with other board members, will be interviewing candidates for the tournament director position, which is the head of the LOC position. So we will be concluding on that process, and it's envisaged that immediately after we've done the interviews, they will go for the competency assessments. So either 1 April or 1 May, that tournament director will start. In this year, it is envisaged in terms of the bid book that schools will be mobilized. So as soon as we know who are the 16 countries that will be competing, we do know, of course, South Africa as the host, England, Australia, New Zealand, they are the top 4, will be playing. And then we're hoping Malawi and Uganda will also be qualifying. But in terms of the others, there would be Jamaica, Scotland, Singapore, etc. And then we would have where one school would adopt a country. So that would be where we have a school's rollout that has started. Then in terms of mobilizing the community, on the 4th of February, Minister Marais and I traveled to Johannesburg, where they launched Netball Fridays. So it is envisaged that from every Friday, from the 4th of Feb, that we want South Africans and people that are resident here in South Africa to wear something that shows national pride and also support for netball. What we have done in terms of the funding is that we've made funding available for facilities, and in the next 2 to 3 months, many of the facilities will come into play, where Minister Marais will open these facilities. So on our side, what a part of the funding that will be used, I will in the next 3 months be meeting all the municipalities, where we will ask the municipalities who wishes to have fan parks and viewing centers, because we need to create a 2010 feel for the World Cup. In terms of the bid book, our province as the Western Cape, we are obliged to have at least 1 viewing center per district. So that equates to 6 viewing centers immediately. And then at the same time, National Department of Sport, Arts and Culture has asked that the same look and feel be done across the country. So at the moment, we are still developing what this exact look and feel means, because sometimes the context may differ. Sometimes we may use a two-song center. Sometimes we may use an open facility such as the parade. And then the idea is to have a fan walk from somewhere to the convention center. So in terms of some of our expenditure, that would certainly be a big one, because we would have to cross-subsidize with municipalities in order to have viewing centers. And what we've indicated to municipalities is that depending where we're going to have these facilities, and we will still have a discussion about it, we may have more than one per district. So those are some of the discussions that would need to take place. We are now in that phase of identifying the towns / municipalities that would then have an interest in that. Then in this year, all the people for the LOC will be appointed, and all the staff. So we as the Western Cape are contributing towards those costs. And they are in total, if everybody gets appointed by June, there would be about 24 staff members in total. So from our side, as the Western Cape, we are contributing towards the Netball World Cup aspects, and therefore that is the allocation. The 5.4 in 2024-25, it's on our allocation letter, and normally we will see if there's any balances of anything that would need to come in, but we will certainly just between the CFO and myself make sure what that last 5.4 million allocation is, Chair. But the others is what I explained, the viewing centers to a large extent. The second question related to the inputs of the National Sport and Recreation Plan. And yes, we have had a public participation process. In January last year, we convened together with the Western Cape Provincial Sport Confederation a public talk that was hosted by the Confederation under the presidency of Mr. Nwadia, and we invited all sport federations in the Western Cape to participate. We had one of the lawyers from National. They came and they gave some input, and then in August this year, we continued with the process, and I then also gave inputs to the federations, and in November this year, we sent a document to National with our Western Cape Provincial government inputs and various other members of federations. And Chair, we envisaged that there would be some indabas this year if the National Sport and Recreation Plan has got a national indaba plan, but we are awaiting National for that one. But certainly we've already sent our inputs as the Western Cape. In terms of the Better Together games and the older persons games, it is envisaged that we will again have the Better Together games. Last year, we of course had a watered down games where we had some indoor games like darts and a sporting code such as golf, where people can be alone on sort of on the greens, but we are hoping to have a bigger Better Together games. We are also in discussions with the City of Cape Town about the older persons games, because we believe that it should take place, but we are also conscious and working with the Department of Health as to when we can allow a mass number of people to be together, and particularly the over 50 age group would be a vulnerable group, so we would not necessarily push the older persons games too hard. In terms of the Laingsburg facility, I visited the facility on the 24th of November. They provided me with a report. They showed me some of the things that they have done. And what we have done now is to examine the report, and we've also asked them certain questions for further clarity. Mr. Tutu also had a meeting with Mr. Komanisi, who is the municipal officer in charge of that, and they hope to finalize their back and forth by the end of this month, so that the HOD, CFO, and myself can have then the final report. But from what I could see, those things were done. It's just a matter of the report back and the accounting for that. Chair, those were my questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. CFO will cover the others. There's just one that I missed from Member Kama, the decrease in the libraries and archives. That one is it's an impact of an earmarked allocation that was given to libraries of 38 million last year when the conditional grant was cut because of COVID-19. And then PT in the adjustment process then made that amount available to them. and that amount is not available in this year. So we've reverted back to the original budget this year. So it's reflecting as if it's a reduction. Thank you, Chair. CFO.
Thank you, HOD. Thank you, Chair. So I'm going to start off with consultants. The reason for the increase, significant increase of 236%. It is mainly related to the additional funding that we've received. So that covers the 1.5 million for the Kango case, the 1.5 million for the feasibility studies for the cultural facilities. Then we also have an additional amount of 815,000 for the Cradle of Human Culture. Then in addition to that, the 2 million for the YESPO for the review of the youth programs within the province. Then in addition to that, so that is for the current year in terms of additional funding. But if you look at it comparatively for the current financial year during the adjusted estimates, we reprioritize the ECM budget to the tune of 9.4 million, which will be reallocated to us in the adjusted estimates. And the reason for that was merely because of the impact of COVID-19 on the ECM project. The next one is venues and facilities. So there are two areas where we made provision for venues and facilities in excess of what we normally would provide for. And the one is within the area of the cultural awards. So for the current year, we did not have a cultural award. So comparatively, it will show an increase. And then within the year beyond, we have provided sufficient funding for the conferences. So those are the two areas where we've increased. The last one, it's legal costs. And the reason for the decrease in legal costs is because we had to absorb the impact of the COE or the wage increases. So obviously we had to then reprioritize from goods and services. And that was one of the areas that we felt we could use some of the funding to cover the cost of our COE. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, just in terms of the youth, so the program has now been established, as we said earlier, and which has moved the funding from some funding was in the MOD program and some funding was under management, and it's being consolidated. It includes the 15 million for the holiday programs, the 15 million additional funding for year beyond, and the existing year beyond funding, which is 14 million. And then it also includes some other funding, again, on year beyond and on the Lights On campaign for after school programs and the advocacy work. And all of that funding was already on our budgets. It's just been consolidated under the one program. In terms of the expansion, which was the other question asked, just in terms of how the program is expanding. So the program is expanding across the Western Cape, and it's doing it on the basis of two things. The one is a geographic expansion, and the second is a programmatic expansion. So in addition to Year Beyond Academic, which has worked in schools, and Scouting in schools, which has obviously been in schools. Last year, we brought in the at-home learning, which was really working in communities on the street, picking up learners who weren't attending school. It was a COVID innovation. But we also now have 1,000 Stories with libraries and ICT, and we're going to be working with the museums on placemakers, and then also on a number of different streams with communities around well-being.
Members, we are now at 4:20. Is there any last question, follow-up questions based on this particular part of the vote? As indicated earlier on, the entire vote has now been tabled. I see Advocate Deirdre Bartman.
Thank you, Chair. Just a follow-up question on your question regarding the JJ Ellis Sports Ground in Laingsburg, which received 717,000 Rand. Could the department please forward us that close-out report? And just what is the back and forth with Mr. Komanisi? I know Mr. Komanisi. So I just want to understand what's the back and forth if everything has been concluded and if everything that's done is done. And also, did they take pictures on the 24th of November when they went and did inspection of the JJ Ellis. Because when I went to go do oversight, I also took photos. I just want to check that a month, 2 months later, after my oversight, when the department went to go check the JJ Ellis, that their pictures look much better than mine. Because if I can see on their pictures that everything is hunky-dory, then I would be very happy. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you so much. Dr. Bauer, you want to? Yes.
Yeah. So the department received a report from Laingsburg. We now have questions for Laingsburg to make sure. So we will only be finalizing our closeout report with the CFO's assistance and the HOD before we can send anything, because it's important that we have clarity on each of those aspects as well. And I didn't really take pictures because I looked at it myself when I did the walkabout with Mr. Komanisi as well. But we will certainly, this matter is not off the table. It's certainly there, and it's one of the things that we are following up as well.
Thank you so much. Member Bartman, I trust that you find that in order. We will definitely then await that final closed-off report in that regard. Members, we have discussed the vote, cultural affairs and sport. Before we end off, the entire vote has been tabled. Is there any additional question? We do know in terms of our parliamentary privileges, we are able to submit parliamentary questions, raise motions, as well as call for debates within the House in terms of our oversight mandate. I anticipate that the silence means that we have wrapped up. It is 4:21. I will now, for the record, indicate that I'm opening the floor to any member of the public. Members would be aware that I have indicated earlier on that we have received no submission, but for the record, it is open. I see no hands. I hear no voice. And we will proceed in terms of allowing the minister as well as the HOD to make any concluding remarks. I normally get this wrong in terms of who must go first. Sometimes the HOD doesn't want to talk after the minister. So I will allow it up to whoever wants to go first on who wants to make concluding remarks first. But I do want to say in terms of the input earlier on, I played soccer at Stephen Regan in Mitchell's Plain. It wasn't named after me. But I do appreciate that we are able to have these engagements. We are able to ask the questions and we will get it. Like I've indicated in the beginning, that it has been a very difficult week across the Western Cape. Before this, the minister mentioned engagement with SAPS in terms of Khayelitsha again. But we do know, and I think for all members will echo the sentiments that it is so vital for us to engage and the role that this department play. And I will again say that we need more money. That has been said over and over, but I will now allow for the minister or the HOD, whoever wants to go first.
I pressed my button first, Chair. Chair, mine is just to say thank you very much to you as well as the members for all the questions and for fulfilling their role. And we really do appreciate that. As DCAS, we just want to reiterate that our focus going forward, beyond the priority areas that the Western Cape government has decided on of jobs, safety and well-being, is we're going to be emphasizing social cohesion, youth and mental well-being, and also given the challenges with the budget that it has not grown as much as we would have loved, given the increase in the pressures on the community, we are looking at changing our operating models. We have to work differently just to make sure that this money goes as far as possible. So thank you very much, Chair.
Chair, can I go? Thank you, Chair, I want to thank the Standing Committee always for this engagement. It's always respectful. And also to the staff, Chairperson, thank you so much. And then I hope you've noticed that all of our departments managers were here. So thank you everyone for coming. It's wonderful to be the political lead of this department. And then I just want to end off with a quote. The budget is not just a collection of numbers, but an expression of our values and aspirations. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Before I ask Member Kama to do the official thanks on behalf of the committee, I have received a request that the minister indicated earlier on that you would like to have a photo taken, that this is everyone being present. I am going to coordinate it in such a way that myself and Member Kama and Wasim will be at the back, and we will get Member Mackenzie, Vin Vogel, and Member Bartman to add their videos so that we can quickly take that photo before you are duly excused. But once again, baie dankie. Thank you so much. Member Kama.
No, thanks, Chair. Although I think you have just done what you want me to do. I think let me also, on behalf of the committee, thank the department. And really, the questions that we are asking are to assist the department to do more and do better, you know, based on the interactions that we also have with the public. And we really appreciate that all departments are here. It's not usual, I must say. So we appreciate that even the manner that the questions are answered, they are given to the individual departments in order to give sufficient answers. And for that, we thank the department and wish them all the best in the coming financial year. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you so much, Member Kama. If politics doesn't work out for me, I can coordinate photos. So, Member Kama, are we going to stand over here?
Member Bartman, you can smile.
I was waiting for the person in the online on the ground to put their jacket on first.
Mooi smile, Member Mackenzie.
Almal was by die dentist.
We can't hear. Is the photo done or what?
I'm asking myself the same question. What is happening?
Members, as the department.
We are still smiling, Chairperson, and you are done.
As the department leaves the chambers, we will quickly do the business of the committee, and I will take a hand for any requests for information, but also I will encourage us to duly deliberate and adopt our report on vote 13. Baie dankie. I see Member Bartman and Member Mackenzie in that order.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, in terms of information, the one official indicated that they could get us the information regarding the extra 400,000 Rand for the artscape from last year. if that information can please be provided. And then I wanted to find out whether the department has any paraphernalia for the Netball World Cup. I feel quite strongly about the fact that as a committee we do need to promote the Netball World Cup as well, as we go along and as we do our oversight. And I would actually like to encourage us that if there is any paraphernalia available, that as a committee we should wear these paraphernalia when we are at our in-person cultural affairs and sports meetings and or on oversight. And I would then also like us to encourage the same way that we have soccer moms across the world, that we please encourage netball dads, because we have seen in terms of South Africa that South Africa has one of the highest statistics of children who don't have present fathers in their life. So I do think that as a committee we need to promote fathers to go and support their daughters at their respective netball matches in anticipation of this Netball World Cup. And then finally, a request for oversight. I would like to find out whether it would be possible for us to prioritize going to do oversight over the funding that has been spent within the municipalities in the Central Karoo, and to see what has been achieved there in terms of those fields. And perhaps we can then even include the mod programs at schools in this regard. Finally, I would like to, given the information that has been presented for us, I would like to propose that we support this particular vote. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Member Bartman. I see Member Mackenzie.
Thank you, Chairperson. I'm covered by Member Bartman and I fully support the vote as well.
Thanks, Chair. I don't know if our capable, yes, if we can read the ones we have.
Thank you, Chairperson. The committee requests a list of partners for the Year Beyond program, list of areas identified for the holiday project, request that the department forwards information and or advertisements regarding the calls for applications for programs such as the Year Beyond program and holiday project, provides detail on the increased funding for the Artscape. I think Member Bartman probably amended that because that's the note that I got. So I will go with what she had said, and then request of the funding for the J.J. Ellis Sports Ground upon its conclusion. As I recall correctly, Dr. Bauer said that is not yet funded.
No, thanks, Chair. And in actual fact, in the one of the, I think the anomaly that Member Bartman also asked earlier, even the department did indicate that it's 500,000. It's not actually 400. It's 500,000, and they said they're going to come back. And I don't know, Chair, if I heard properly, but also on the 5.4 million in terms of the allocations over the 3-year period. There's a 5.4 million that Dr. Bauer said they are going to come back about in terms of what is it earmarked for. And what I would want to request, Chair, is also what he had committed to, understanding that it is the municipalities that are administering or doing the applications for the MIC program. But he had indicated that he will speak to the chief director of the department so that we can get a list of the projects that are funded in terms of the MIC program in the province. And lastly, it's the investigation in terms of the Hanover Park. If we can get that report once the investigation is completed, because they had indicated that they are doing a full investigation and they would inform the committee, because it's important to understand as to where is the gap in terms of these financial funding initiatives. Thanks, Chair. On the issue of the vote, for reasons that will be provided in the debate, the ANC chooses to use Rule 90 that our minority view will be noted of not supporting the vote. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you so much, Member Kama. Members, I am covered my side. We will capture all the requests for information within our minutes. I now will request that our procedural officer flight the relevant report based on Member Bartman's input, together with Member Kama stating that the African National Congress wishes to express their minority view in terms of Rule 90. The report will then read as follows. I will then duly sign the relevant report to be submitted to the Budget Committee. Members, I will read out the report. Members, due to technology issues, the committee report will then read that report of the Standing Committee on Community Safety, Cultural Affairs and Sport on vote 13, Cultural Affairs and Sport in the schedule of the Western Cape Appropriation Bill B2 of 2022 dated 15th of March as follows. The Standing Committee on Community Safety, Cultural Affairs and Sport, having deliberated on the subject of vote 13, Cultural Affairs and Sport in the schedule of the Western Cape Appropriation Bill, refer to the committee in accordance with Standing Rule 188, reports that it supports the vote. In accordance with Rule 90, the African National Congress expresses its minority view not to support the vote. Members, I trust that you find that in order. I see Member Bartman.
Thank you, Chair. I move that we adopt the report.
Thank you so much. That is seconded by Member Kama. The report is then duly adopted. We will now. Thank you, members. The report is now duly adopted. We have a set of minutes that we quickly need to that has been circulated. Should be in that window. Members, the minutes will now be flighted. I'm going to open via email. Members, this is a report, a minutes that we have Member Bosman and Member Botha on. I wanted to double check procedurally. Are we able to, what would be the way forward, procedural officer?
Thank you, Chairperson. Chair, I know it's conventional that those who are supposed to be, that were in the meeting account, changes same committee. So as the chairperson, you can also make a decision on behalf of the committee to adopt. some level did happen where the old committee did not adopt it. So you could just by consensus have an agreement. The main thing is that it's the same committee, even though the membership has changed.
Members, based on the input from the procedural officer and with member Van Vogel's attendance here today, I want to move that we adopt the minutes. And member Van Vogel is present as well. She was an additional member in this particular meeting.
Also, thank you, Chairperson. Also, this set of minutes, excuse me, is basically an account of the report that was adopted. It just gives a bit more of the processes, and as you can see, for information and the consideration of draft documents. This point 6, for example, didn't appear in the committee's report, but in essence, the minutes speak to the report. It's just a tick box that we have to have a report and minutes. So, yeah.
Members, I trust that you find that in order and we have consensus.
That's in order, Chair.
Thank you so much. Baie dankie vir die indication, member Bartman. Are we done? Members, on that note, once again, thank you so much to our sign language interpreters. Baie dankie. We appreciate you highly. And Mary Ann Burgess, Wasim Matthews, and everyone else, members, thank you so much. This meeting is now duly adjourned. Thank you.